This is Steve Weiner. I used to write for the David Letterman Show. This is Mike Chisholm, who spent his entire life dreaming of being on the David Letterman Show and will never happen. Watch his podcast instead. La, 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 la.
Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. Okay, I love this episode. Rory Rosegarten. God, the alliteration is just killing me. Automatopoetically, it's such a great name. Rory Rosegarten. God damn it, Mike, get it better. Anyway, Rory is on the show today. Rory is, I would say, throw out the, people can try and prove me wrong. I don't think you're going to be able to. One of the most successful boutique comedy managers in history. So this isn't a guy that has, hundreds and hundreds of clients. He has a select few clients, comedians, entertainers, but the ones that he resonates with are ones that will go into his stable of folks. And as a comedy manager, he has seen so much change in the last 4 decades plus of what he has done. And I mean, yes, Ray Romano, Brian Regan, Tom Green, Robert Klein, many other clients that over the years that are household names, but a significant connection to the Letterman mythos because one of the founders and the guy who helped make Everybody Loves Raymond happen, which is by far the most successful production that Worldwide Pants has been a part of, other than, of course, Late Show with David Letterman. And it's just, we have a fantastic conversation that is spanning. I tried very hard not to make it all about Ray Romano because we certainly could. Ray Romano and his story is amazing. And hopefully we can get Ray on the show here one day where he can talk about it. But at the end of the day, sometimes people want to be the guy and sometimes people want to be the guy behind the guy. Some guys do the show, some guys do the business of show. And Rory is an absolute ninja when it comes to that, but a ninja with a heart. And you will see that right away as we start talking. Just a great guy, has so many behind the scenes stories of how, back all the way to Ray Romano's first, his Carson appearance. And an experience in the green room with Johnny afterwards, all the way up to the very end of Late Show and beyond. And we talk about Brian Regan and we talk about some of these other amazing pieces of the puzzle that Rory is a part of when it comes to the mythos of David Letterman. The Letterman Podcast has one sponsor only, hello-deli.com. Go to hello-deli.com for one of your only official sources for Letterman merchandise. The other source is Worldwide Pants. Go to the YouTube channel and you'll see the Worldwide Pants has a store now. You can go there and you can get different merchandise than what Rupert has. So there's a couple places now if we want to go through and get some Letterman swag. You can go to the Worldwide Pants store. You can go to hello-deli.com. I hope today that you enjoy even a fraction of this episode as I did having the conversation with Rory. Please enjoy. All right, Rory, I have so many things I want to ask you about, and there's so many directions that we can go into this episode here. But I wanted to start it in a way of creating commonality between the two of us. I know that you're a collector. I am a collector of many things that I love so much. And it's funny looking at your background. I wasn't aware that guitars were going to be the background there, so I may know the answer. But the house is up in flames. Everybody is out, which is good. You've got time to go back in for 2 things. 2 things. What are the things you're going back in the house for?
My wife and kids.
No, they're out. They're out. They're good.
Oh,
I'm talking about the collection. When you collect things,
No. Well, there's a couple things.
Okay.
My Emmys. I have 2 Emmys, and they're very dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
So they would go.
Yep, you grab the Emmys. Both of them. That's what you... Oh, I love it.
I would grab the Emmys. The rest of the stuff is great, but it's stuff.
This is actually... There's the folder right there for the original David Letterman Emmy nomination. Oh. It was for the morning show. That was the folder that they got saying that they had been nominated for... an Emmy for the morning show back in the day. I'm going to use that.
Is it empty? Is it?
No. There's a map, an old school map how to get there. There's instructions how to tie a bow tie. There is a parking pass that goes on. Oh no, it's loaded. And the telegram, which is interesting because the Telegram has a
Telegram.
yeah,
Oh
it's
my
a
God.
telegram with the
Yeah.
nomination in it. So that being said, one of the things that I find very, very charming, your relationship with the Letterman Productions started way early on. Is Barry Sand the first connection that
Yes.
you had to? Okay,
Yes.
how did you
Yeah.
and Barry connect? And let's give Barry a little bit of love before we kind of move
Well,
on to other stuff.
Barry's a very nice man. Another one I haven't spoken to in decades.
Yeah, I'll get him a message to you. I'll get him a message from you
But
saying hi.
he was the executive producer of Dave's show,
Hmm.
and I had comedians and clients who would be on the show. So I got to know Barry. He's a very nice guy. He is.
Absolutely. Down in Florida now. And I just traded
He
correspondence with
retired?
his,
Is he
pardon me?
retired? Is he
Yeah, yeah,
retired?
he's retired now, and he was doing some work with the university down there, but now he's full on retired. So his wife and I correspond every once in a while here. Um, so let's talk manager for a second. And I mean, it's so cool. You and I were going to do this months ago, and then
Yeah.
we didn't. And I love the way that serendipity kind of takes over because in that time, I've kind of gone head down into this world of management because we're talking. Morty and I are talking. Morty says hi, by the way.
Well, hi
He wants
back.
me to make sure I said hi to you. But we're talking about doing this documentary on Jack Rollins, and so who was in many respects the pioneer, the very first person. I mean,
Was.
he was the first manager to get a production deal, as an example. And so I've been learning a lot about,
And he
uh,
was the executive producer on Dave's show.
well, that's yes, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. And then discovered Woody Allen and all these
Yeah.
amazing, amazing things. Harry Belafonte, Robert Klein. There's a lot of cross pollination here, which is very, very
Yes.
interesting.
Yes.
So he kind of created the blueprint for what a manager could be. I'm looking at your career, and I'm saying, oh my goodness. The changes you have seen, Rory, from being a manager. And I wanted to maybe before we kind of get into some of the worldwide pants stuff and whatnot, just talk about being a manager back then versus being a manager now. Are they even in the same solar system anymore? Are there things that have been through lines from the beginning
Remotely.
to now?
Remotely.
Okay. Okay.
When I started, look, I'm doing this 42 years.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, but it's
Yeah.
true. Um, it was show business, and now it's show industry.
Oh, interesting.
You see the difference?
Absolutely.
The companies weren't publicly traded,
Yep.
and we all came up with ideas, and it was very creative, and business was second.
Yeah.
I'm not naive. I know business is first, but for the creative people, business was second.
Yep.
Now you have to consider it all differently than you considered it then.
Yeah. And back then, I mean, you see an act, and I mean, looking into Jack, I'm curious back then if it was similar for you. The thing about Jack is he would be, and it was as stand up was becoming an industry. Like you look at stand up back then versus stand up now. The value of a special, and what it could mean, monetarily, but also like you say for the industry. These comedians are becoming industries unto themselves. You
Yeah.
could a guy like Rogan, you look at Kreischer, you look at some of these people who are just they've got their own ecosystems already or their own atmosphere around them. But back then, Jack would be in the clubs till 3 a.m. trying to find that
Me too.
that person who was
Me
different.
too.
I
But
imagine
I
it was
gotta
similar for
say,
you. I imagine it
I
was very
gotta
similar.
say that everything I always did was I did it based on my belly. I never did anything based on it was good business.
Uh-huh.
It didn't work for me that way. And I had the opportunity to work with some pretty great people
Yeah.
that I just either their comedy didn't do it for me or they didn't do it for me as a person. Look,
Hmm.
there are comedians that I have met through the years who are the funniest people. They're
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep.
They're not good guys. They're
Yeah.
just not. And I've always said that I want to love what I'm doing.
Yep.
I want to love it. I want to get up every day and love what I'm doing. And I've been very, very selective. I have a very small group of guys that I work with. I don't work with 50 guys. I'm not
Yeah.
a corporation that way. I'm not judging it. I'm saying for me, I'm the last of the Mohicans. So I kind of bring old school to the new school, and I,
Yeah.
I, I balance it that way.
Well, and I think that that's a time honored thing. Like you go back and put the Letterman, view over it. You look at that morning show or the early incarnation of late night, and yes, you had these quote unquote cutting edge writers and people who were going to be counterculture and the tone of the show. But then you had like Hal Gurney and you had Jack Rollins. You had people who were the bridge from the old show business and the storied part of show business to counter with that beautiful cutting edge technology. You're kind of the same way in that regard. Like, I mean, you've seen all of these changes compared to what what the industry looks like now, and you're able to bring that flavor, the time tested true traditions, and bring it into the now and add it. And that's a beautiful alchemy.
Let's say it this way. I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna, but the reality is funny is funny.
Yes.
Period. Henny Youngman once said to me, I met him once when I was younger, obviously, and he said, there's no such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it before.
Yes.
Which I loved, because it meant that even if something's old, it can be new to somebody else. Now, clearly, there's comedy that's out of style, references that are dated. I get that. I understand that. But the basic premise of a joke, the basic premise of material, funny is funny. What's happened is the audience is much smarter. And I think that people generally negate the audience a little bit. And I think the audience really knows. They know what they like. When they're in a comedy club and they're paying 2 cover charges and a 2-drink minimum, and the traffic was terrible, and they had to pay for the parking, and they had to pay for the babysitter.
Yep.
It's got to be good. It's got to be good. And I get that, and that's fair. But if the basic part of it, funny is funny. A joke works or a joke doesn't work. Years and years ago, the club that I used in New York was the Comic Strip. That's kind of where I started, and the comedians all there, Jerry Seinfeld and Paul Reiser. And Eddie Murphy had become a superstar. He said he was going to be bigger than the Beatles, and he was. And I remember Eddie said once, which just a bunch of guys were shooting the shit and talking, and Eddie said, the problem for me now is I don't know what's funny, because I get on stage and I go, how y'all doing? And they're laughing, which is, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse as a pure stand-up comedian.
I think you talk about the audience and the sophistication of that, of how we as a comedy audience have evolved as well. I think there's goodwill that shows up for the first couple minutes of a set for somebody like that. And then after that couple minutes of goodwill, it's great to see you, whatnot. The material does still need to do its thing.
Yes,
and
it still needs to do its thing, but you get to a point, some comedians reach such a crazy level that it's very hard. Are they being polite? Yes, clearly 40 minutes in and they're looking at their watch, the stuff it's not working.
Yeah.
But when you're a known quantity, you get the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And it's very hard. Again, comedy, the one thing that the audience doesn't understand, that every and in or is practiced on stage in front of a mirror at 2:00 in the morning.
Yep.
Comedians are the hardest working guys because they introduce them, they go on stage, they're the lighting director, they're the sound man, they're the artist, they're the writer, they're alone. They can't bounce off anybody else. It's a it's a high wire act.
Yep.
The good comedians, and I've been surrounded by a lot of great comedians in my life, and I'm very fortunate for that. They work very, very hard.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and not just very, very hard to make it look effortless and almost like they're improvising as they go along, as they're performing.
It's a true craft.
Yes.
What has happened now with the phones and the internet and computer technology, you can be a comedian who's got 15 minutes of material.
Yeah.
Back in the day, those guys worked in a club and they they had to have an act.
Yeah.
They had to have an act.
Yep.
They had to go for an hour. Like I talk to my guys, and especially the younger guys, and I'll say, how much A material do you have?
Yeah.
A material, not filler material, not B material you're working on.
Yeah.
How much A do you have? And very often it's 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
And you really have to work. There's no shortcut for the work. There's no magic bullet. There's no pill you can take.
Yep.
It's work. And if you think there is a shortcut, then comedy's not for you.
Absolutely. And even like I'll even throw in guys today like Matt Rife, right? Looks like it's all, crowd work and he's just making up his no 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 no.
Right.
It's way
Right.
deeper than that. And for people who
Right.
just dismiss even someone who is phenomenal at crowd work,
Right.
no 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 no. There's a lot of depth that has gone into that. And many times the funny part when I watch Rife, I have a wife and it turns out, hey, guess what? She likes Matt Rife. Who would have thought? We watch him and I'm like, oh, that is so clever. Cause you can see him setting up for crowd work and actually ping-ponging live. And that some of this was predetermined beforehand and he knew a direction was going to go a certain way.
Well, I think with Matt specifically,
Yep.
Matt suddenly came out of nowhere. But I got to tell you something. Matt worked underground online for a really long time.
Yep.
The audience, a lot of the audience doesn't know the specifics of it. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't come in overnight. He
Mm-hmm.
worked his way up to that and he had his moment and he hit a grand slam.
Yeah. Another one who's like that is, and I've watched him a couple of times in small venues, and then I watched him open for Bert when Bert toured up here in Canada. Is Ian Bagg, and I mean Ian Bagg
Oh,
is just
Ian's been around he's also been around a really long time.
he wants to come on the
Again,
show because he's mad that he never got a chance to go on Letterman, and he wants to talk about it.
oh
Yeah,
boy.
like he's a
Yeah.
long
Well,
time.
I'll tell you something. Ian, my Lucian Hold at the comic strip, who's passed away, he was the manager of the comic strip. He kind of managed Ian. So that's a long time ago. Ian's been around a long time and he's done a lot of hard work and he's had a lot of lousy gigs, but he works at his craft.
Yeah.
I'm a purist when it comes to that. I'm not being an idiot about it, but
No.
I am a purist about comedy because I can't do it. I tried. I'm not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very respectful of those who can. It's miraculous to me that they can knit a sweater from a pile of
Yep.
undyed wool,
Yep.
And that's a very incredible high calling to be able to do that.
You and I could go so deep on just this, part of the of
I love comedy, so
Me
I'll
too.
talk to you all day long.
Me
Yeah.
too. Absolutely. I want to bring it back to late night television and the intersection between comedy and late night television over the years, the evolution of that. When you started as a manager, the king was still reigning, and Johnny was, the idea of getting a guy or a gal onto Carson. The Carson bump was a thing back then, and you saw the evolution of the Carson bump. You saw the early incarnation of the Letterman bump because of all the hoopla when he
Right.
moved over, that sort of
Right.
thing. The idea of what it meant to have a comedian hone their hunk, get their hunk on for 5 minutes or 8 minutes on one of these shows. Do you remember your first client that got on Johnny's Tonight Show?
I managed Robert Klein in my
Yeah.
early days,
Yeah.
right? So Robert was on that show. 'Cause
Pretty
he was
good for the resume.
on
Did
that
you take
show.
over right after Jack? Did he come to you after Jack?
Yes.
I think that's what I thought.
I
Okay.
I worked with Robert for 40 years.
Yeah.
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 So, but here's the thing, you touched on something. So Ray Romano had the incredible distinction of doing that show.
Yep.
And
Carson.
Carson.
Yeah.
And he killed. And we were in the dressing room afterward. And in the dressing room walks Johnny and Ed McMahon. And Johnny says, well, you got to be happy with that. And a little small talk. And he turned around and he walked out. And I looked at Ray and Ray looked at me. It was crazy. But here's the interesting part. Ray, as a comedian,
Yeah.
his goal was to do the Tonight Show with Johnny.
Yeah.
And now he did it.
Yep.
And he was sad
Yeah.
because he goes, now what?
Where's the next mountain?
Where's the next
Is there
thing?
another mountain?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
He
What,
was,
okay. What year would
tell
that
you,
have
I'll
been?
tell you another inside story.
Yeah, please.
That Ray Romano and Phil Rosenthal, the showrunner of Everybody Loves Raymond,
He's on my list too, by the way. Yep.
got to have lunch with Johnny Carson on Johnny's boat. The two of them with Johnny.
That's
It
lovely.
is the only time in all the time that I'm working with Ray that I've been jealous of him. Oh, if I could have only been a fly on that boat that
On
day.
that deck.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
I love, you both those guys are on my list to talk to because both are just, the voice that both of them have is one that is just lovely. I want to tell you, Rory, I have so much respect for you. There is no way I was going to be the first person to mention Ray Romano because obviously, it's funny. I had Bill Carter on the show and I wanted to talk to him for so long. And I asked him about late shift and what it meant and I said, is that the pinnacle? And he said, well, he goes, when I pass away, if a publication happens to do, any sort of obituary about me, in the first few sentences, it will mention late shift, and it will. And I get that. And I imagine it might be similar for you and Ray because you have worked together for so long and in so many ways created history with that show the way that you did. I imagine that would be the case, but I have so much respect for you and your career and you're part of it. I was not going to mention Ray first. For the audience, I promise we will get to some Ray stuff for sure, but I want to go back to this year because I am absolutely fascinated by it. So you're in the green room. Johnny Carson says, well, you got to be happy with that. That's
a direct quote.
That is a crazy moment
It
for
was
a young comedian.
Moment. It's been a crazy moment for all the years.
That's unbelievable. I love how grateful you are about it. Like I'm the same way. I like working around people who are like I love kindness. I love good guys. I totally resonate with what you just said there. And to think about you two in that green room having that titan say those
we were
words.
like two idiots. We were two idiots, and the king walks in like that, and Ray is still riding high about the set, and it's like it's out of body experience. And then Johnny walks in. That was crazy.
So we're talking that'd be like 1990 ish. Yeah.
Well,
so you're
yeah.
Well, it's close to the end of Carson's run, clearly.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
There's some really cool alchemy there because I mean the lore of comedians that could do a set on Letterman and do a set on Carson. Romano did it in a very unique way because he had this great moment with Johnny. And then of course his first set on Letterman. But the idea at that point that Johnny Carson would do that, you're probably 5-6 years in the business, whatever it is. Romano.
No. I got in the business.
Are you 10 years?
In 81, 80,
Okay, so you're
81.
10 years in the business,
Yeah,
but still,
9 years.
it's the king doing that. I got to ask about the Carson bump. Did the Carson bump still exist at that moment? Okay,
Yes.
so his life changed the next day.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Carson bump was a huge thing.
Yeah.
It was a huge thing. Early in the early days, because I managed David Brenner.
Okay,
And
yeah, all right.
When Brenner did the Tonight Show the first time,
Yep.
that was it. I mean, he was a made man and he made a lot of money and he went on the road and he went to Vegas. He really did well.
Yep.
The bump existed years later because there was something about being kissed on the head by Johnny. It was a very special thing because if Johnny said Johnny was sort of the spokesman for the United States, him and Walter Cronkite were and when Johnny said you were funny and Johnny gave you one of these, you were made because Johnny had told the public that's a guy.
Mm-hmm.
So the bump exists.
Man, I got to ask about Brenner. Okay, were you managing Brenner during the Hulk Hogan thing?
No, I was
Okay, all right.
I was
I
not.
have a slice of pro wrestling in my life. It's an
I
interesting
do
one.
too. Now I'll tell you something that you don't know, and you're
Okay.
gonna flip. I managed Lou Albano and Sergeant Slaughter.
That is
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep.
I had a charity professional wrestling promotion for 5 years in my city up here in Canada, and it was just to give back to the community. It was my version of a golf tournament, right? I wanted to do
Yeah,
something for
yeah,
the, and so I got into the business. I'm actually a member of Cauliflower Alley, which is like their fraternity.
yeah.
Bob Sergeant Slaughter, I've met him multiple times.
He's the
Phenomenal
nicest
guy,
guy.
like
The nice,
absolutely.
the
Um,
nicest guy.
I was gonna have Jerry on the show here. I've met Jerry Jerry Lawler a bunch of times.
Mhm.
Because that moment on Letterman, of course, infamous. We were looking to do the show, and then he had his stroke, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
I've got Jerry Lawler stories, but we're gonna wait to get him back on here. Oh,
yeah.
okay. So yeah, I gotta ask this: did you ever meet Andy Kaufman? Did you ever cross paths with
I
Kaufman?
did. Now, there's so much. My life has been insane. When I was in high school, I did a monthly celebrity interview column.
Mm-hmm.
The first interview I ever did was with Andy Kaufman. He did a show at Great Neck North Senior High School where he had gone to school. I'm from Great Neck, although the other side of the tracks,
Yep.
it's south.
Yeah.
And I met him then.
Um, I have uh, I have voracious envy and jealousy for Judd Apatow. Because you talk about in Canada, Gretzky's most famous quote: "You don't go where the puck is, you go where the puck is going." Boy, when he was in high school, did he ever know where the puck was going?
Of
And
course.
when he did his little radio show or his interview show for this high school paper and talking to all these comics,
Well,
you did
that's
the
what I
same
did.
thing.
Well,
I
it's
was gonna,
funny because Judd and I have been friends for 40 years,
yep,
and we kind of have a very similar, not the same, but similar
yep.
background. Yeah.
It's I'm so in the past happily jealous, like,
Do you
oh, I
know, do
would
you
love to have
know
been that
Judd?
guy. What's
Do you
that?
know him? Do you
No, no,
know
no.
Judd?
Just studied up a
He's a
lot.
wonderful guy.
Well, actually, it's funny. Well, I don't know if I should say this on one. So with this Rollins doc, we're looking for a producer who cares very much about being a steward of comedy history. You know,
Right.
it's a very particular one that we're looking for, and his name is one of the names that we had
He's
kind
the
of
perfect
thought
guy
about
for it.
for
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So, but we can talk about that after. But anyway, yeah, Judd is just. I mean, I look at like, and I have so much envy for like what you did there. You talked to Andy Kaufman back then. Was he at all in character or in the wrestling business as a kayfabe? Like, was he? Did he?
Little character, a little out of
Yeah,
character. You
yeah. You
know,
never really knew, right?
he had done a show, so it was sort of after the show, so
Yep,
he had come down a little bit.
yep.
So, yeah.
That is phenomenal. Um, so you like to work with good guys, good talent, people who you resonated with and harmonized with. That's great, because if when adversity hits, that's who you want to be, your foxhole buddy or people that you resonate with. I get that. Were all of them ones who, I don't want to say just necessarily clean, because that's not, I don't mean it like that, but were all of them ones that you would want to have a hunk that could get on the Tonight Show versus other comedians who were more avant-garde? They had no interest in being, you know what I'm saying? Was it
Well,
more?
okay, it's a good question. The reality is, I never worked with someone with the Tonight Show as the goal.
Okay.
They are who they are. They do what they do, and
Yep.
then you fit into things you fit into.
Yep.
I tend to look. I like funny guys.
Yeah.
If they curse or they don't curse, guys who curse just to curse, I don't have patience for that.
Yep. Yep. Tacky.
But guys who curse with purpose, or it builds their character that they're portraying on stage, then I'm not as put off by it, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
But it all comes back to the same thing. Are they funny?
Yeah.
And funny is like holding water,
Yeah.
because a fat woman could walk into this room and she
Yep.
could slip and fall. I could laugh, you could cry, and we'd both be right, depending on your point of view.
Yes.
So I never judged anybody for anybody that they worked with. I judge it solely on, do I think they're funny? I have to sit in this chair every day,
Yeah.
and it's lonely and it's hard and it's never ending. If I don't think they're funny, I can't I'm not a liar. I'm not a good liar.
Yep.
So it's very hard to be on the phone and pretend he's great.
Hmm.
I think when you're in the role of a manager and you're dealing with the agency and you're dealing with buyers and producers and whatever, I think people know if you're sincere. I
Yeah.
think that that kind of energy and excitement comes forth.
Yeah.
Look, I've worked with guys in my career who didn't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
They were great comedians, but it's like, again, holding water. I can't tell you definitively why they're not the next big thing.
Yeah.
I thought they were the next big thing, but it never happened.
Yeah.
But that didn't make them less funny, not to me.
The show is good, but the business didn't work.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
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 And
Um,
by the way, there are more comedians in that category
yeah.
than comedians in the superstar category.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
There are two,
Absolutely.
there are guys who have a career, and there are guys who are working comedians.
Yep.
And I got to tell you something. The best comedian in the world is in Omaha somewhere, and he hasn't had the opportunity, or the right guy hasn't seen him, or whatever. And he's staying in Omaha because his family's there and his friends are there, and he's doing the best he can.
Yep.
And he could be the best comedian ever
Yep.
of all time,
Yep.
and no one will ever see him. So I'm sensitive to that, and I'm aware that that's part of everything that we do.
Absolutely. Um, to go back to the late night portion, and again, there are people, the dozens of people who enjoy this show are wondering, when are you going to get to Everybody Loves Raymond and Pants and all that? Yeah, we'll get to it. But I'm so fascinated about the late night years,
Yes.
because again, very few comedians. I mean, Don Giller and I went through a list of them not too long ago. There are some that could do. Seinfeld always said he was the only one that could do late night and the Tonight Show at the same time. Carson and Letterman back in the
Yes.
day.
Well, they
There
were
were actually a
competitive.
few. There were a few that could do
No, no,
both,
no,
but
no,
not very
no.
many.
Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, I love it.
Carson and Letterman.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Letterman and Leno.
Oh, I'm going before that. I'm going back.
Oh,
I'm going
okay.
back. I'm
They
going
were
back to the Tonight Show
competitive.
and to late night.
It was competition. It was competitive. It was ratings. There were guys who preceded that. There were guys who were such superstars.
Yeah.
They dictated the terms. There's a period of time where the show is the thing and you're here.
Yeah.
And then this happens.
Yes, exactly. We got
So,
the show. We got this guy. Awesome. As opposed
right,
to
right,
this guy's
correct,
gonna, be a
correct,
part of the show. So back
correct.
then though, like, because Carson and Letterman, very different
Very,
flavors, very different,
very,
including the comics that they would book
correct,
to do shots. Did
correct.
back in the day, did you have any notable experiences with late night with David Letterman with any of your clients? I mean, Klein obviously,
Well,
did spots and things, but
in the early days when he was on NBC,
yes, sir.
no, I had comedians who worked on the show, and we then tried to make hay while the sun shines.
Yep,
We would
absolutely.
call all the clubs prior to them being on the show, and then
Yep,
follow up after them being, if they did well,
yep.
we followed up and made sure that they were booked solidly and had opportunities, or as best as we could get it.
Yep. I hear you. Um, and I guess a big part of your job is to have a good relationship with the Zoe Friedmans of the world or the Eddie
Yes,
Brills of the world.
yes.
That's a
Well,
huge part of your deal, right?
both of them are friends of
Yeah.
mine. I like them both immensely.
Yeah.
Eddie, has he done the podcast?
Twice. Yeah.
Right,
Eddie and I are
yeah.
friends. Yeah,
Eddie
absolutely.
he's a wonderful guy. He's funny as hell.
Yep.
He had an amazing job at Letterman,
Yeah.
warming up the audience. Dave trusted him and liked him. And I could see why. He's a wonderful person, and he's really, really funny.
Yeah. And got a
And
heart the size of New York, a big heart.
Zoe is Bud Friedman's daughter.
Hmm.
Bud owned the Improv. And Zoe, in the early part of her career, worked for networks and
Mhm.
whatever. She had jobs in show business, also old school and really nice.
Yeah. And as a
Really.
manager, it's your job to find, those are two examples of them, but people who are all kind of the gatekeepers and build a
Yeah,
relationship, right? So you can send your, like, that's a big part of your job back
it
then.
is. It
Is it
is.
still?
Yeah, it's different. It's
Yep.
different than it used to be.
Yep.
In the again, the old days, the new days. In the old
Yep.
days, you called your friend, you called whoever it was, and you talked to them. You could talk to them. Now the layers have layers have layers. You know, the funny thing is that even with the success of Everybody Loves Raymond and Men of
Yep.
a Certain Age and movies and everything else, this is what I have. I have earned the right for them to listen to me. But I
Mhm.
have there is no right that they put you on as a favor. You know what I mean? They don't just
100%. They
they
could
don't
not
throw
do
you
that.
on, you know?
Yep.
I appreciate and I respect the fact that I'm around a long time and I really don't have any problems with anybody. So they'll listen to me. They'll take my call. They will talk to me. But I'm not a fool, and I don't believe that anyone is putting on any one of my clients as a favor to me. They're putting them on because they're good. The other thing I do as a manager, which is true, I mean, we talked about Ray, but I don't wedge one against the other either.
Hmm.
I don't ever say, and I never have said, if you want Ray, you have to book so and so. And I'll tell you why. It's unfair to Ray to use him that way.
Hmm.
And it's unfair for the unknown comedian because did he get it because he's good or did he get it because of Ray?
Yeah.
I'm not naive, and I know you do what you got to do, you get the guy on, and then, but I don't, I'm very careful about not taking advantage of anybody. I just
Hmm.
don't feel, I wouldn't like it, and I'm assuming they wouldn't like it either.
Feels like we're deconstructing an episode of the Larry Sanders Show where they would make fun of
Yeah,
exactly the things that you're talking about here.
yeah.
You know, you want so and so, you got to have so and so, and
No.
power plays and things like that.
Look, I know that happens, and I'm
Sure.
not saying it's wrong. It's not my thing.
Well, and then the other thing, Eddie, like, here's the part where I just have tremendous, to this day, tremendous empathy for Eddie. You know, Eddie, who's been around in the trenches forever.
Yep.
And when the show's dark or whatever, he's going around the country, he's going around and he's seeing people that he's known for years. And I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy for Late
Yeah.
Show. And
Yeah.
he's like, I'm sorry, I can't do you any favors. But the
Right.
people that he did believe in and wanted to, he would sit there and help hone
Right.
their
Right.
hunk, hone their act or
But
whatever to
I
try
think,
and find a piece that would work.
the one thing I have to say about Eddie, which I've always really appreciated, he's very intelligent and he's got a very good moral compass.
Yes.
There are club bookers who are not as good and
Hmm.
people who are not as good as Eddie. But Eddie's a relatively a really good guy. And he didn't want to take advantage of who he was or what he did or mislead anybody that he could take advantage.
Yes. And yet there's a lineup of people that are basically saying, please take advantage of me.
Right.
Please, you know
Right.
what I mean? And
Right.
that's a really tough
Again,
spot.
I'm not, look, I'm being very clear. I'm not saying right or wrong.
No, no, no.
The way I'm in show business is what's good for me,
Yeah.
and hopefully the people that I work with, it's good for them.
Yeah.
And then we have a coming together. We have the same point of view about the way to go about it.
Yes.
The guys that I've been had the pleasure of working with for years and years, they're all good guys. They're all very decent. They have I hate to say the word again, they have a good moral compass, and then you trudge forward.
Yeah. I there's a few things that I'm delighted about when it comes to just your story and the story of your group. You met Ray. Was it during a K-Rock? Was it during you were a judge of
Well,
a K-Rock comedy
you really
contest?
did your homework.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I'll tell you exactly how I met him. I was a judge on a K-Rock, which is a radio station,
Yeah,
New
yeah,
York
LA. Oh
K-Rock
yeah, big,
comedy
big, big. Yep,
competition.
yep.
And I was a judge, whatever. and I don't even remember who the other judges were. A club owner and a booker, and we were all on the panel.
Yep.
And I saw Ray, and he killed me.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how good he was.
The
Now,
belly went.
this is before Ray was Ray, right?
Yeah.
He was a working comedian. And I remember going backstage before the end of the competition when there were still people in it. I said, I don't care how this turns out. I want to work with you, you
Mhm.
know? At that time, I was already the manager for Brian Regan for 6 months. So I'm
Oh,
with
yeah,
Brian
Regan
6 months
first.
later than Ray.
Interesting. Okay, yeah.
And Ray called Brian and said, "Who is this guy? This is your guy?" Like it was very, very funny. Meanwhile, here we are 42 years later. They play golf. We're all good friends.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
I love that so much. Yeah, I mean, okay, so Ray at that point, had the twins been born at that point?
They were just born.
Okay.
They were just
S-
getting born.
So,
Wait a second. Were the twins born? No, they were infants.
okay.
They
Okay.
were infants.
Okay. So now around this time, the landscape changes. And Carson has been pushed out or he's going off into the sunset. Letterman's moving over. I can imagine the feeling, and we've had so many people on here who talked about their specific point of view at that specific time with their specific viewpoint in the business, whether they worked for the show or outside of the show. That must have been a really crazy time as a comedy manager going, okay, everything is
It was.
changing here.
It
Letterman's
was.
moving over. He's going to the big show, the 11:30 deal. There was no bigger story in show business. Again, books being written about it at the time, movies
Right.
being made, like crazy time.
Right.
Obviously you're in the show business. You see this as massive opportunity. You want to get in there as soon as possible. Is that
Well,
where
the
you're
way
at
it
this point?
worked is early in my career, remember, I was the manager for Robert Klein.
Yes.
Remember, we talked about this becomes this,
Yes.
this. So
Yes.
Robert was someone who was on Letterman,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to know everybody. And that's when I met Morty.
Okay.
That's when I
Gotcha.
met Morty, and we hit it off. Another tremendous guy, funny. He's really funny.
I love Robert Morton.
Yeah,
I'm
he's a
so
he,
grateful to
he's
have
a
him in my life.
really he's a very decent, very smart, and incredibly funny
Yep.
guy.
Yep.
And I called him up and I told him about Ray, and he put Ray on the show.
Yep.
And when Ray had the set of his life, to this day, I still show that set to people as a learning set, you
I didn't
know?
do any research for this show here to go back. It was this one, right? It was
Yes,
this one.
yes.
That is one of my
Wait a
favorite
second,
jokes of all time. I
let
love
me
that. Is
finish.
this funny? Because of the
Let
kid.
me finish. Let me
Yeah,
finish
please
the
do.
story.
Please do.
So Ray gets on the show.
Yep.
He kills,
Yep.
absolutely slaughters.
Yep.
Morty found me backstage or wherever we were, and he said, Dave loved him. Dave said he's incredibly accessible. The following Saturday, Rob Burnett, who was running Worldwide Pants, helping the show, he was an executive producer on the show at that time, but
Yep.
Dave also had another company to build TV shows and whatever. And I think that
Absolutely.
was CBS's way of not only paying him, but finding another avenue to pay him more and to give him something else, another situation.
100%.
And Rob Burnett called Ray directly on Saturday. And Ray's joke is, I was hosing the kids off the fence. Yeah. And Rob Burnett said, we have this development deal. You have a deal, do it. And Ray said, I have nothing. I have nothing.
Yep.
And that's how it was all born. But I will tell you another inside story.
Please.
The Joe Rogan role
Yeah.
on
News radio.
on news radio
Yep.
wasn't originally Joe Rogan.
Absolutely.
It was Ray Romano.
For a day or something like that, or one
And
episode.
Paul
Yeah.
Sims called me
Yeah.
after rehearsal the first day and said, this is not working out.
Yeah.
We're going to go in another direction.
Yeah.
And I had to call and tell Ray exactly what he said. And I was a lot slicker when I was younger, and I was nervous to tell him, but that's what happened. To this day, it's the worst and best call I ever had to make.
Yeah.
Because if he had stayed on news radio, Everybody Loves Raymond would have never happened, possibly.
The Chinese have a word. Is it problem and opportunity are the same word, or crisis
Right,
and opportunity are the same word,
right.
whatever. And worked out pretty good for both guys. Worked out
Worked out pretty good for both guys. Worked out
that
good.
night. So just to paint the picture of when Ray came on, yeah, it was the Keys one. It was that was the set, and it was so funny. And I'll go back and I'm almost positive, because late show at that point was ahead of the Tonight Show. It was like you said, and we've talked about this on the show a lot, but Letterman basically got the Carson deal, except continued to move over to CBS, and that included production, that included Worldwide Pants. They hadn't produced much at that point. I think they had Ed was in production at that point, because that was
in
Burnett's
production or pre-production,
yeah, because that was Beckerman and Burnett and
Rob
Beckerman's
Beckerman,
baby.
Rob
I
Beckerman,
love John. John's such a good guy, and
I'm sorry, John Beckerman
Yeah.
and Rob Burnett.
That's right. So I think that was going, and I think maybe they had conversations with Bonnie Hunt at that point, but I'm not sure. It was all in its infancy. Pants hadn't done anything yet, and the landscape at
By
that
the way,
point.
Worldwide Pants, and I'll tell you another insight.
Please.
When we made the deal for Raymond, it was Worldwide Pants and CBS.
Yep.
But HBO got involved because they were a real company.
Yes.
Worldwide Pants was Rob Burnett and a secretary at that time.
So
it was Dave doing it, but they had to bring someone in to really be a production company to handle the show.
Is this how Stu got involved?
Yes.
That's where Stu came into it. Yeah.
Stu worked at that time. Stu worked for HBO.
Again, you talk about all these intersections.
Now, wait.
Yeah.
And Morty and Stu were best friends.
And roommates at one point, and at one point,
Correct.
Stu Smiley back in the day, managing Letterman, like during his times where he
for Jack Rollins, where Robert Klein was.
Exactly. Like now, there's so many intersections here.
But this is the point. That is also one of the big differences from the old days to now.
Yeah.
It was smaller.
Yes.
And those things could happen because it was feasible that they would happen.
Yep.
Now it's so big and there are so many layers and it's so corporate in so many ways. You don't have exactly a couple of college chums and they're in show business together. And it's just different.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the industry you talked about at the beginning of the thing. This is the industry part. And that's right. So yeah, Worldwide Pants hadn't done anything, and in the market. So Late Show was bigger than the Tonight Show at that point. Huge show. If I do remember correctly, that night it might have been Ray's second appearance, but there was a night where Paul Schaefer cut Mel Gibson's leg when they were doing
I'll tell you, I gotta tell you an inside story about that too.
When maybe turn your pants into shorts, right? That was that night. Okay.
Hold on. Man, you need a chill pill, buddy.
Oh, I'm excited, brother. I've been excited for this. I'm excited for this.
The first night Ray was on the Tonight Show, Mel Gibson was on the Tonight Show. And Mel Gibson had come out. Dave had cut Mel's pants and Mel cut Dave's pants.
Yes.
Ray and I literally had a conversation backstage before should he come out with his pants cut off? And much to Ray's credit, he said no, because that makes me part of the boys club and I'm not part of that club. I haven't earned it yet.
Yeah.
He wanted to come out like clearly the lesser guy, and he was absolutely right. And had he done that, he might not have done as well. So it was the right thing.
That was his first shot?
Yes.
Okay. So in my mind, his first shot, as far as I'm concerned, was the character Raymond in Everybody Loves Raymond, the father who was being beaten down a little bit, so that makes sense to me. The idea to not cut the pants off. I don't think the tone stays the same if he would have done it.
That was all Ray.
Yep.
That was all Ray.
Yep.
The one thing about Ray, which is rather amazing, first of all, he's a tremendously good dramatic actor,
Yeah.
as we have seen
Yep.
since.
Yep.
But when we got Raymond and he did Letterman,
Hmm.
Ray, that was his character. The
Yeah.
whole idea, the reason Raymond works is Ray is basically doing a TV show about what he does in stand-up.
Yep.
So it wasn't contrived. It was, I mean, look, it's comedically contrived, but
Oh yeah.
Ray was true to being Ray all the time.
Yes. And in this time where, I mean, whether you like it, you don't like it, whatever, for whatever reason, comedy went down this interesting path where the goal was to get discovered and get a sitcom for many of these performers. And that was kind of the attitude that was out there at that point. I think it had probably crested in many ways. Because Seinfeld had hit already and some of these other ones had hit already. But Pants didn't have one yet. And
That let me tell you a little bit about this.
please.
So ABC, NBC, CBS, they used
Yeah.
to give development deals to comedians.
Put them on hold. Yeah. Yeah.
They put them on hold, and they
Yep.
would pay a lot. I mean, the deals would be $500,000 or
Yeah.
350, life-changing money at that time. And because everybody wanted to get into the comedy business, Seinfeld was as hot as hell. It was a great show, and why not?
Yep.
Why not? Now, in the cut to now, those deals don't even exist anymore.
No. No. And so yes, you had this happening. Worldwide Pants. I guess that's probably the process, or the process, depending on where you're from. That's with Ray. That's kind of what happens at first. They're sniffing around, going, "Yeah, we want to put a show into development," and Pants now jumping into the fray with the HBOs and the CBSs as backers. They put them on hold and they build a show and they bring on guys like Phil. You had a hard time getting writers for that show, didn't you?
Well, I'm going to tell you about that. We
Yeah.
met with 11 writers. We met at a diner.
Yeah.
And the first writer, we had coffee with him. And the second writer, we had toast. And the third writer, we had eggs. We had to meet out and we met with all these writers, and they were all good. They were all really good people because we had the pleasure of saying CBS and Letterman.
Yeah.
So you got the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
This is where Stu Smiley earned every penny that Stu Smiley ever made in his life from Raymond. Stu said to us, "There's a writer at Coach. He's really good.
Oh, that's where Phil
And
comes
you
in.
should
Okay.
meet him.
Yeah.
You should meet him." And Stu and Ray and I and Phil met. And Phil was basically the Jewish Raymond. Ray was
Absolutely.
Italian, Phil's Jewish. The same guy,
Absolutely.
different sauce,
Yep.
and they hit it off. They had the same kind of father and the same kind of mother, and it was very, very similar. They didn't know each other. It's like an arranged marriage. But we picked Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil did a tremendous job with Ray. I mean, they created that show together.
Yeah.
It was based on Ray and based on Ray's comedy, and Phil was a wonderful writer and creative, and that pilot is incredible. That fruit scene alone is still legendary. And the interesting thing was that in the early days, we were at a different studio, Gower, I believe, and Phil's office was at this end of the studio, at the office, and Ray's office was over here, this end. And in the very, very beginning, we were nervous. I was a kid, and I would go to Ray's office, and he would say, "Would you tell Phil, blah, 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 blah?" And I would walk all the way down the hall and tell Phil, and he said, "Why don't you tell Ray, blah, 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 blah." And we'd walk because they didn't know each other yet. It was, they were getting to know each other. So it was, that was a very joyous and fun part of doing the show. It was really from the ground up, an unknown guy, a first time executive producer on a show. Like it was fantastic.
Yeah. At first time production company. But
let me say this last thing, that Ray and Phil deserve all the credit for Everybody Loves Raymond. It was a great cast, great people, capturing lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
Ray worked like an animal because he would be an actor and be on set, and then he'd come back and sit with the writers because he's a comedian, right?
Yes.
So it's the material.
Yes.
And he wanted to make sure it was always genuine and it wasn't sitcom-y and it was comfortable for him. And Phil just ran the room with the writers like fantastically. And the two of them together, they're still friends to this day. And the two of them together made a wonderful show. I mean, it's hard for me to be objective because I was involved,
Sure.
but it's a great show. And I know it's a great show because I have never not met people, and the first thing they say is how much they love the show.
Yeah.
Some people say, I never saw it first run. I saw it in syndication. It's my favorite show. So we were part of something that was very special. Dave loved Ray, and he was fantastic with him, and very lucky. Very lucky. I wish I could say we're geniuses. We're lucky as hell.
Yep.
We're very fortunate. We really appreciate what happened to us. It certainly never lost on me, even to this day. I mean, the last Raymond was on, ran from 1996 to 2005.
Yeah.
This is 2024, and I'm just as proud of it now as I was then. Maybe even more, because I'm wistful about it now.
Well, it holds up. Here's the way I've always described Everybody Loves Raymond. It was the Tiffany Network's Seinfeld. And
Yes.
the reason I say it that way is because CBS, has a standard that they strive for, and the idea of the Tiffany Network. You look at Seinfeld, and I loved Seinfeld. Don't get me wrong, the genius of it all, incredible, but not the greatest people in the world in that show. The characters were, it was very self-absorbed and whatnot. Whereas Raymond, the Tiffany Network Seinfeld, because again, you got a comedian that's centered around the show, but it's family and warmth, but it's real life. And to me, it holds up in a different way than Seinfeld.
I'm going to stop you.
Please do.
I don't agree with that completely.
Excellent.
I think Seinfeld was Seinfeld, and Everybody Loves Raymond was Everybody Loves Raymond. They were different shows about different people and different circumstances, different writers.
Yes.
I go back to what I said 20 minutes ago. Were they funny?
Yes.
That's all that matters. All the rest is conversation over a beer. The reality is you work all day, you come home, you sit in your living room with your wife or your kids or whatever, and you put it on. Are you laughing?
Yeah.
If you're laughing, then the job was done.
Well, and that's kind of my point. To me, that version, exactly what you said, you kind of made my point for me in that regard. Like, to me, it's the Tiffany Network's version of that show that is timeless, that is it is that high bar and that high quality, where a network can say this was our, really at the end of the day, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Like, it's not like Raymond's gone away. People are still watching it and discovering it, and it holds up in a way.
But you know why
through today's scrutiny?
Do you know why they're watching?
Because it's a great show.
Because it's funny.
Absolutely.
Because it's funny.
Yeah.
Go back to what Henny Youngman told me. There's no such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it before. If it's funny and you've never watched Raymond and it's funny, the odds are you're going to laugh.
Yeah.
That's why The Honeymooners is still on.
Yep.
They made 39 Honeymooners plus the lost episodes.
Yep.
And that was made a zillion years ago. People are still watching it. Why? Because it's funny.
Absolutely. Back at that time, you had other comedians who would get on and have spots for Letterman. Brian Regan is a phenomenal example of that, and I would be.
Brian Regan holds the record on CBS as the comedian who was on the most.
Brian Regan was to me is like you could set your watch, and there were some comedians that would come on late show that I just was happy every single time they would be on. It was like they were part of the family. There's a few comedians that are in that also, many would say kind of cut their teeth on that stage, whereas the previous generation, they cut their teeth on Carson. Late Show certainly has that legacy. Brian Regan might be at the top of comedians who did that.
Well, I'm so happy that you're saying that. I'll tell you also something which He is the he's too nice for show business. He's the nicest, most gentle, most polite person. His
Yep.
parents did a great job with him. He's a great guy. Another one who takes the comedy very seriously. He's unbelievable. He writes a new act every 18 months.
Yep.
To this day, he's unreal. He's
Accessible.
unreal.
But then you talk about this work ethic that these comedians have, and when they decide to act, you can tell that many of them will throw themselves into that. Ray certainly being one who is,
Yes.
became a good actor. But I watched Loudermilk, and
Brian,
I was
genius.
absolutely astounded by Brian's
Genius.
acting in that. He made me
Genius.
cry.
Yep. He's
Oh my
genius.
God, was he unbelievable? He's a guy that I want to have him on the show. I want to talk Letterman, but I'm such a big music fan, and Loudermilk just hit me so hard.
Well, the
And
funny thing with Loudermilk was, we did a couple of seasons and we did on AT&T network and they moved over to Netflix
yeah,
in the #3 show on Netflix.
it's so good. The
Yeah,
Gen
it's really,
Xers who love
I would
music, that's like,
absolutely encourage.
yep.
I'm not making any money from. I would
No.
absolutely encourage the audience to watch the show, Loudermilk.
Oh,
They would love it. They would laugh. Everybody who's in it is incredible.
yep.
And Brian does possibly the best work of his career in that show.
Absolutely. And it's funny because he brings his hilariousness, quirkiness to the role, but then the role gets a little bit deeper and some substance shows up, and his
Well, the
acting
third
is just
season,
jaw-dropping.
the third season, I
Yep.
mean, you meet him in the first season, you know him more in the
Yeah.
second. In the third season, it's his season.
Yeah.
It's his
Absolutely.
season. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
amazing. He's
Um,
amazing. And I'll tell you something.
yeah.
That's a perfect example of a guy that you root for
Yes.
because he's so nice. He's so beloved by comedians. He's so well respected.
Yeah.
They all love him and think he's funny as hell. And when he got Loudermilk, everybody was rooting for him because
Uh,
if you can't root for Brian, who can you root for?
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I loved him on Late Show. He was the perfect example of somebody who, like, I don't get me wrong, I love Burr. Burr's one of my he might even
Of
be on my Rushmore. And I watch Burr on Letterman, but when you're watching Burr on Letterman, how much he is adjusting. And I love how Burr is a
Right.
problem solver. Okay, so I got to do clean.
Well,
Okay,
he's very
I'll figure it
smart.
out. I'll do it. I'll get it
No,
done.
no, no. He's incredibly smart.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. But
He's funny
that
and
if you're
smart.
watching him on Letterman, you're having a completely different experience if you're going to see Burr in the club. It's just
Of course.
it's a different Chappelle too, same deal.
By the
Right?
way,
But
every
Regan, yeah,
comedian is a little different in the club.
sure.
When you have to do the 5 minutes on those late shows, and
Yep.
especially Letterman, it had to be tight and it had to work, and there was no room for breath. Like you had 5 minutes to boom, 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 and you rearrange things. What you see in a club is different a little bit from what you'll see on Letterman or on the Late
Yes.
Show.
Yes.
What I will say, and I know exactly where you were going, Brian is the closest to being the same.
Exactly. Thank you for
Yes,
saying. I'm glad you said it instead of me because
yes,
you got the
yes.
credibility and I'm just some
But I got
whatever.
to tell you something. I'm not, again, the ethos of a comedian. The
Yeah.
bottom line is he works so hard to make it look so easy.
Yes.
I can't say that enough. The audience never sees the comedians. It's like a songwriter. You don't see them struggling over a song. You just see the song. That's the way it's supposed to be. The
Mm-hmm.
man behind the curtain. Comedians, David Letterman, perfect example. All those bits he did, Dave worked so hard. He was incredibly kind to me, always nice to me, always. I shouldn't tell this, but I'll tell this. What the hell?
I love when a story begins that way, Rory. Thank you.
After 9/11,
Yeah.
everybody was off the air and the world was coming to an end. We didn't know
Yeah.
what end was up. We were scared. We were confused. Everybody was terrified. And Dave came back
Yeah.
and he gave an incredible monologue. I don't take advantage of the relationships I have. I don't call Dave just to call Dave.
Mm-hmm.
But I called him the next day, and he took the call, and he made some, I won't repeat it, but he made a funny joke.
Of course.
And I said to him, I just wanted to tell you that you were great last night.
Yeah.
And you said what we were all thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Very much so.
very hard. I've said this 15 times. It's very hard to be a comedian. The comedians today, it's a little bit different. In the older days, it was more pure. You're a comedian and you did comedy.
Yeah.
There were no phones, there was no computers.
No.
You were funny and you got on stage and you told your pound of jokes and you hoped you hit a home run. And no comedian worth his weight comes off the stage and is happy.
Yeah.
They want to make an adjustment. They want to make a change. They want to reorder. They're always working, always working. Comedians are, they're funny and they make it look so easy. It is the furthest thing from easy. They work really hard.
I could not agree more. I know how I want to end this. I know how I want to end but I'm not there yet. Another good Canadian boy who I worshipped growing up right after I got so I'm 48 at the time of this recording. Literally when Dave moved over, I was in grade 11. So like my cement was still very wet, and it was like a big moment for me at that point with all of these things that have stuck. A couple of years later, when I'm going and hanging out and we're all moved out of our parents' houses and we're hanging out at our buddies' apartments and whatnot, an underground guy showed up in Canada called Tom Green, and Tom Green absolutely blew all of our doors off of.
Yes.
And Canadians have this thing, Rory, and you probably know this already. But when one of us goes down south and makes it big, we have a vicarious pride that we all feel. Like when Jim Carrey went down and did what he did, oh yeah, because we've seen him for years and years and years on some of these Canadian shows. Tom Green, very, very much that guy, because we watched him on our version of the Comedy Channel and some of the other things. And then he gets this big deal and goes down south. I've been going back and forth with Tom. I haven't said this out loud, but I'm saying it now. Tom's going to come on the show here at some point. We're very excited about that. Because he's got a lot of connections with Letterman.
Look, one of the joys of my life is I manage him.
Yeah.
And there's so much to tell you. So in January on Amazon Prime, there are 3 different Tom Green shows that he directed and shot. I'll tell you about that in a minute. It's Tom Green Country, I Got a Mule, and this is the Tom Green documentary.
Yeah.
He's extraordinary. Everybody says, is he crazy? Is he nuts? And I said, you don't understand. To be that nuts, you have to be brilliant to pull that off. He's a very hardworking guy. So here's how it goes. So he does the show on Rogers Cable in Canada. The show gets picked up by MTV. He's had an incredible life. He married Drew Barrymore.
For a cup of coffee.
The show was on MTV and doing great, he got testicular cancer. He did a special on MTV about his surgery and testicular cancer. Very funny, but very poignant. And it saved oodles and oodles of lives because everybody was talking about it now. So there was no stigma. He's extraordinary. Good guy. He hosted Letterman when Dave had was it his heart surgery?
Yeah, it was when he went for the heart surgery. We've had Gabe Abelson on the show a couple of times. Gabe's a friend. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to have Tom on.
Tom's 2 things in his life that he's most proud of is hosting Saturday Night Live and hosting Letterman.
Absolutely.
He loves Letterman. Oh my goodness. He loves him. So he's at the top of his game now, and he's young. Everybody forgets that when he did MTV, he was a kid, so he's a young guy.
That was how we viewed him, because we were all like 19, 20 years old, whatever. Like I say, first apartments, little TV, all crowded around it.
That's the guy.
And we're like, one of us made it somehow. What
Yep.
the hell? How did this happen?
He's
Him
a
and Glenn Humlink
very
having a show. How does this happen?
He's fun to work with. He's a lot of fun to work with. I mean,
Yeah.
I get up every morning at 8 o'clock and there's a text from him
Yeah.
with a million ideas. Some of them suck,
Yeah.
but the point is he's always thinking, he's always working. This is a guy who works 8 days a week,
Yeah.
29 hours a day. He's always thinking. He's also 10 steps ahead of everybody all the time. Sometimes he's right, more times he's right, sometimes he's wrong. He listens to other people, he listens to concepts, and he's fun to work with. It's exhausting, but in the best possible way, because there's so many things going on and so many ideas. You're like the guy on the Ed Sullivan show in the old days spinning the plates,
Yep.
but another guy who's really a good guy too. Great.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that we talked about him a little bit here. Like, okay, biggest show on the planet. You know, they talk about traditional media versus Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan credits Tom
Yes.
Green
Yes.
because when Tom was doing the YouTube show, it was when
From
it
his
was
living
very
room.
difficult to do a YouTube show. He
From
had
his
to
living room.
he outfitted his whole house into a traditional television studio. It's not
Correct.
like this little thing that I got going. I got a nice
That
little studio
it
here.
was
You couldn't do
exactly
that then.
then. It was exactly then that the light bulb went off for Joe Rogan,
Exactly.
and he started to move in that direction.
Yep.
And I don't know whatever happened to Joe Rogan. I don't hear from him very much, but yeah, it's amazing. And Joe always, all to Joe's credit,
Yep.
he always bows to Tom as the guy. I mean,
He
Tom is
does.
the godfather of podcasting. He had the first one.
Yep.
Could you imagine? Think about today.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a day where you were on a podcast and you were the only one in the world who
Yeah.
was on a
Yeah. That's
podcast? That
bonkers.
was Tom. That was Tom Green.
Yep. Yep. He did it when it was the lifting was very heavy to do that back then. The
Very
commitment was
heavy.
absolutely
And you
huge.
had to be a dreamer. You had to
Yes.
be a dreamer because it was round peg, square hole stuff. But Tom didn't let up. He was going to do this hook, crook, or otherwise, and he was right.
Yep. And it's a good for folks who enjoy this show and enjoy the things that are all within the Letterman kind of universe. If ever you want to see some fun Norm Macdonald stuff that you may not have seen, go back and look at all the Norm Macdonald appearances on Tom's internet show. It's all on YouTube.
Absolutely.
You can find it all. Like, it's all designed for the
I'll
internet.
tell you another thing outside of
My man.
So Tom's first manager, who was a friend of mine,
Yeah.
he also managed Norm Macdonald.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Well, there you
Howard
go. And another
His name
Canadian
was Howard
treasure.
Lapidus. His name
Yep.
was Howard Lapidus. He was Tom's manager when the Tom Green show was on MTV. Terrific guy. His wife Maria, the nicest people. And funny, very, very funny guy. Very funny. Yeah.
I could do this with you all day. I'm going to move into the close. I cannot wait for our paths to cross again. I believe they will. I believe they will
I'll
cross
do
again.
the show again.
Oh, my man. Thank you, Rory. I appreciate you
And I
saying that.
promise you it won't take a half a year or so to arrange it. Yeah.
Now, it was supposed to happen this way because I wouldn't have known as much as I knew about Jack and all this other stuff to this point,
Right.
and it made it that much better. And again, everything happens when it's supposed to happen. I'm fully convinced of that. I don't try and force anything. So thank you. We're getting close now. I'm starting to talk about the idea of Dave being off network television for 10 years. And this April, this May, I should say, is Dave being off the air for 10 years, Late Show closing off.
I'll tell you a Letterman thing.
Yes, of course.
In the last, I don't know if it was 10 or 15 episodes.
Yeah.
They did me a favor on Letterman.
Ah.
They put Ray and Brian Regan on the same show.
Okay. We're about to talk about that.
What number show is that?
I don't know what number it is, but it's within the last couple weeks though. It's
Yes.
in, I can find out. We can open up Last Days of Letterman and we can go through it, but it was right near the end.
Yes.
And
yeah. And
you asked for that. You asked them to put them on the same show.
Yes. Yes.
The last 6 weeks, I contend, from my vantage point, because to me, I don't even view Johnny as the king and Dave as everyone else. I view it as the Godfather. I
Yeah,
view
yeah,
Carson as Vito and Dave as
yeah,
Michael. That's how I view
right.
it. It's just
Well,
the
that's good.
next.
That's a good way to look at it.
That's how I look at it. So
Although
and
I
we
will
can.
say that Johnny and Dave didn't kill anybody.
Well,
Yeah.
do we know?
Comedically, they killed. Yeah,
When what I love about that analogy is people go, okay, well, who's Leno? And then I don't say anything,
yeah.
because we can all make our distinction as to who that is. But the last 6 weeks of Letterman to me is the greatest 6 weeks of any run of television of ever, because it was a culmination.
All A+ celebrities
Yeah,
came to kiss the ring.
and friends of the show, not just the A+ celebrities. You're right about that, but the friends of the show.
Yes, yes.
And it was just, and so the idea that Ray and Brian were on the same show. I was gonna thank you, Tick Mark asked that
That's
question.
one of my most prideful moments. Not look, at that point, Ray was Ray and Brian's Brian. They need
Yeah,
me like a hole in the head to do Letterman.
yeah,
But I was very proud of that. I was
yes,
very proud of that. It was a coming together. And here's a great thing too. On Ray's last appearance on that show, he cut off the leg of his pants. He cut off
yep.
the leg of his pants. So everything sort of came full circle, and it was sweet. I mean, it sounds so silly to say, but it was very sweet and very sentimental and very lovely that's how it was. And when Dave ended his show, a chapter of show business sort of closed. The
Absolutely.
old school show business. I'm not saying in any way that everybody wasn't changing and adjusting, because we were,
Yes,
but
yes.
there was something very special about, we all kind of started out with Dave and we grew up with Dave, and it was great. It was very emotional and very, I mean, Ray was choked up. I mean, it was tough.
This is where I'm going with this, because there were, in that last 6 weeks, there were five, maybe six performers that actually burst through the crust of, because again, one of the things about this show that we want to have on are guys or gals who got to sit in the chair that were told in no uncertain terms, do not talk about your reverence for Dave. He doesn't want to hear it.
Right,
Don't compliment him. Don't do
right,
this. Don't do that.
right,
And every once in a while, you'd had someone who would buck the trend, but most couldn't do it. And there is a long list of people who it's the greatest moment in their life. They knew that they
correct.
made it. It was the mountain, like what you were talking about with Carson and you guys in that green room going, well, what's next? Many people feel the way about being
Well,
Dave
you got
Stairs,
to
but they
remember
can't talk
something
about it.
with Ray specifically. If Letterman had not made the offer to do
Yes.
Everybody Loves Raymond,
Yes.
Ray's life might not be what Ray's life had become.
Yes.
Honestly, my life wouldn't have become what my life became. So it was, in many ways, it wasn't reverence, it was a thank you. It was, I'm
Definitely.
here because of you. And it's
Yes.
not a silly thing to say. If Dave had not made the deal with us to do Raymond, you and I wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And that's how he accessed it. That's how he got there. Because
Yes,
again, Dave tried to avoid the sentimentality as much as he
yes,
could. He's like a cat weaving around things. But when Ray showed up and he sat on and he's doing panel and he starts bringing out these pictures of what Dave means to him,
that's right.
and he made it funny because
He's
he
right.
absolutely
Yeah,
walked that tightrope so
yeah,
beautifully. He talked about how he showed his family, right? Like, and I mean, you're starting to well up because it's like, exactly what you just said. My life wouldn't be the same thing. He goes, but I got to do a movie. There's me and Sofia Vergara in the movie. Did I get to kiss her? Flips the front. You're damn right I got to kiss her because of you,
yeah,
Dave.
yeah,
And
yeah.
everyone laughs, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
takes the pressure out of the sentimental balloon. But he did it. And his I don't know if you watched the entire 6 weeks, but Ray's moment is in my top 5 moments in that last 6 weeks. Him,
That's right.
Sandler's song, Norm Macdonald's last
Yeah.
stand up on there is up there as
That's when
well. There's a
Norm got
few.
all choked up. He
Yeah,
was
when Norm got
really
choked up too. Yeah,
he started to cry. He was
absolutely.
really, I did see that.
Yeah,
But you know something? It was beautiful.
it
It
was
was
beautiful.
exactly what it should be. It was exactly perfect. It wasn't contrived. Everybody loved Dave, and they wanted to tell Dave that they
Yeah.
loved him and what
Absolutely.
Dave meant to him. You know, to Dave's credit, he's a shy guy, Dave, and he does get a little squirrely with emotion and whatever. I contend that Dave is a mushball. He may not show people, but Dave's a mush. And I think that when all these people were saying nice things, it was too much to take. It wasn't, I don't know any of this for a fact, but I know Dave through the years, so I'm gonna stay with this. I think that it was hard for Dave to just accept all that. He's not much for compliments, and that's not his style.
Yeah.
But the people who are on the show, especially toward the end, all loved him, appreciated what he did for them, and they wanted to tell him and tell the audience too.
Yeah.
And I think that that appearance of Ray and Brian was very special and very a thank you. It was a thank you.
And it
I
was,
didn't.
like you
Ray
said,
didn't
not
need to
contrived.
do
It was
Letterman.
authentic.
Ray
Yeah.
didn't need to do Letterman. Brian didn't need to do Letterman again.
Nope.
They wanted to do Letterman. It wasn't a career move. They wanted to go on. They wanted to say thank you, and they
Yeah.
did.
There's no better place to end this. I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking time and opening up the old memory banks and going through some of this stuff with me. I really, really appreciate it a lot. I am going to pick your brain about some of these other things. You have a brilliant mind, Rory, and I just want to say thank you for contributing to this business of show that we all love so much. Everybody has a piece and everybody has a contribution to it. The business part of it, where folks aren't in industry, but where they are actually a person that wants people to genuinely connect with the people that they are entertaining. You are that guy. You're the guy that helps facilitate that. I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for being part of Raymond, being part of history in the sense of there will never be another worldwide pants. Oh, go ahead.
This is where I'm like Dave, because I'm not good with all these compliments. I am a very fortunate and lucky guy. I have lived a life that is magical. It's been hard and whatever, all the bullshit everybody has to deal with.
Sure.
But when you talk about Dave and that portion of my life and Everybody Loves Raymond, I lived, I'm the man with the golden shoes, and I stepped in a giant pile of shit, and it was amazing for me. And I never, ever not appreciate that. Never.
I'm going to do a quick outro. Stay on the line here, please. We'll say our goodbye privately, and we'll take it from there because that is a perfect way to end. I say it all the time, broken record. This is why we do the show. This is exactly why we do the show, because we want to capture, catalog, and keep and pass on all of these amazing things.
I'm glad that you're doing the show. It's important, and these things shouldn't be lost because they're great stories.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and by the way, before we say goodbye, we'll say our goodbye privately, but Steve Weiner told me to make sure I say hi to you again.
Oh, please say hi back.
Yeah, he loves you.
Please say hi
thinks
back.
You're great. I got a great Klein story for you once we turn this off here with Steven. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the dozens of you who have embraced this show over the last couple of years. We're over 150 episodes in. We're just getting started as far as I'm concerned. I love it so much. So grateful to celebrate the greatest body of broadcast work in history, that of David Letterman and company. Rory is certainly part of the company, and we appreciate him very, very, very much. We have one sponsor on the show, one sponsor only, and it is hello-deli.com. Rupert may not own the deli anymore, but he still owns hello-deli. Yeah, Rupert, absolutely. Good friend.
Some of the best Letterman stuff was in that deli. And
absolutely.
He's great. He was great.
Good friend of the show.
Yes.
Sold the deli, but hello-deli still exists. Up until this week, the only official place to get any David Letterman official merchandise was hello-deli.com. But now Worldwide Pants has a store as well. So make sure you check out the Worldwide Pants store. Go to the Letterman YouTube channel, and you can see all these amazing clips, many of which are ones Rory and I just talked about today. This has been another episode of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you, and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.